kids realized, I didn't tell them during the year that they were doing Scrum or Agile or that they were doing design thinking or any of these other processes. I just told them that this was the way the class was. So in the last week of school, I said, do you realize that you've learned systems and you've been working within a system that adults all over the world work within, that people in Fortune 500 companies work this way, that you have done this at the age of 13. And they sat back and they thought about it, and they were really so happy, because all kids really want is they want those skills to be successful in life. And so they don't want to know what year George Washington was born, and they don't want to know what year the different agreement came out. They want to be successful in the world. They want to know how to operate. The world's a big, scary place. It keeps changing. So they reflected to me that they were feeling really confident and excited that they learned skills that they could actually take outside of the classroom and transfer to other places in their life.
This is Gautam, and I welcome you to episode 20 of the Learn and Unlearn podcast. In today's episode, I have a conversation with Jessica Cavallaro. Jessica is a co-founder of the Agile Mind, which interweaves agile methodologies into K-12 education. She is a champion of project-based learning and creating purposeful education. Welcome, Jessica. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for the invitation.
Can you tell us about your journey on teaching Agile in the classrooms?
So I'm an 11-year veteran teacher. I've been teaching social studies for all of that time in public schools and private schools in New York and Connecticut and Florida. I've always been an out-of-the-box kind of teacher. So I've always been dabbling in project-based learning and design thinking, always trying to find the new kind of thing to bring to my students. I always wanted to make education more purposeful. So not that they're just learning facts that they can regurgitate, but they can learn skills that make them marketable in the real world. And that's really what I find, that's my passion in education. When we went into lockdown last year, we saw that we weren't prepared for virtual teaching. We tried our hardest. We did a great job. We all adapted really quickly, but our kids weren't thriving. They were lonely and they were disconnected. And that was what I really took away from that period of teaching during quarantine. So after that school year ended, I took it upon myself to try to learn about new ways of teaching online. How was I going to teach and reach kids no matter where they were? Because we didn't know what we were going to be heading into. We didn't know if we were staying virtual or going hybrid or staying in class. So we needed to reinvent the wheel. And during that time period, I stumbled upon Scrum. And as a teacher, I don't have a lot of experience with the rest of the world. Like, I've been teaching my whole life. So when I read about Scrum and it was project management, like a light bulb went off on my head, and I said, oh my God, this is what I do. Like, real adults do what I do. We manage projects. And as I read more and more about Scrum and Agile, it was just amazingly clear to me that this is what was needed in education, and that this framework, whether it be Scrum or Agile, could be implemented over the curriculum, and it could run as a system, and kids could run in this system and stay connected and collaborating and creating and learning all these soft skills and business skills that we need. And it could happen whether they were virtual or hybrid or in class. It could happen no matter what. And this is where I really dove in. So that's the beginning story of how I kind of found it.
Interesting. Can you also tell us about your personal journey? How Agile helped you personally?
So being a teacher going into this new school year was daunting. So there's so many things going on, so many things to consider. And I knew that keeping my kids happy and connected was the forefront. So I jumped into Scrum because that was the first thing that I had really learned about. And Scrum has its rituals. And so for a teacher who's used to lesson planning, Scrum is really easy because it has the set rituals that you must go through. So you have your sprint planning and your sprint and your daily Scrum and your review and your retrospective. So those things you can say, okay, here's where they are in my unit. and here's how we're going to get to them. I was lucky enough I reached out to Scrum, and I was lucky enough to have a meeting with Willie where he kind of broke down a lot of the questions that I had right before I went into the school year. And I kind of blindly just jumped in. And, for me, what's the worst that's going to happen? It doesn't work. Then we'll try something new. 8th graders are adaptive. So it was just kind of, I really believe that Agile and Scrum was going to improve my classroom. So I just jumped all in and figured that we would figure it out together, because isn't that kind of Agile in itself? The goal, we'll get there somehow.
Right.
So that's how I started. And it was really successful. The kids were really learning. I had a hybrid classroom. I had kids at home. I have a kid that I never met in person. He was in Alaska the whole time. I teach in Florida. I had a kid that was in North Carolina the entire time. So there was kids all over the country that I never personally met, but we were developing relationships. They were constantly connected to their peers. So it was healthy because they were having one-to-one conversations with peers. And it was fantastic. And then halfway through the year, Jeff Bernstein from Leaf reached out to me, and he said, what would you think about learning more about Agile and implementing Agile into your classroom with Kanban? And of course, if you know me at all by now, I said, yes, why not? Why not jump into another adventure? And Jeff has been phenomenal in being a great, just personal coach and Agile coach. He's taught me so much, but he was able to break it down for me so I could break it down for my kids and really get them onto breaking free, for me too, of breaking free of those ideas of you can't, or that there's limits, or that there's boxes. And we automatically put ourselves in these boxes that no, we can't, and we can. And that's what my kids really discovered this year. So while it was a really tough year and it was an unprecedented year in so many levels, my kids have done amazing work. They've created such strong connections. They have such a deep understanding, and they develop skills that are otherwise not brought into the classroom. So they learned how to do Kanban zone. They break down their work from big chunks into smaller tasks. They run their own projects. So they literally are their own project managers. They allot their own time. They organize themselves. They communicate with each other. All of these skills that are absolutely necessary in the world, these kids learned without me standing at the board saying, this is collaboration. This is how they did it themselves. And that's the best part about it, and they feel so good about it.
Exactly. Can you walk us through how a typical day or a week looks like at school?
So I teach in block, which means that I teach one class for 80 minutes, and I'll see them on Monday, but then I won't see them again until Wednesday. So, I have that double period of time, a really big chunk of time to see them. And so with that, they don't necessarily come in, and I don't always give a mini lesson. If they're in the middle of a project, they come in, they pull up their Kanban board, they look at what's going on, they look at what the next deadline is, they look at who's doing what. A lot of the kids use Kanban. They learned how to adapt to it themselves. So they might have color-coded cards, or they might have assigned cards. But they broke down their project. So they say, okay, so the next deadline is on Friday. We need to have this, and this turned in for a grade. So who's doing what? And then they kind of organize it themselves. And the way that my classroom works is, instead of me standing at the front and giving out information to everyone, I'm then able to go group by group by group and really meet with the kids and see what they actually need. So instead of me deciding that today you need to know A, B, and C, I can go to each group and say, okay, where are you in the project? Do you have any questions? Do you have questions about content? Do you have questions about accomplishing? And that way we're able to build stronger relationships, and the kids get from me specifically what they need instead of me deciding what they need. And so this is what really made the classroom work, and what really enabled those great relationships to build with kids that were in Alaska or North Carolina, is that I got to see them every time we had class. We sat down, we told each other jokes, they asked me specific questions. They got so much more FaceTime from me than they would have received in a traditional classroom where I stood at the front of the room and told them what we were doing for the day. And I think that was a huge huge part of making this year more normal as well.
The new normal.
Yeah.
How has the feedback been from the students?
So the students they build a portfolio for me as well. So I have portfolio work for them, and they always do a sprint review and they always do a retrospective. In the beginning of the year, I made them instead of doing a syllabus, I created a rubric, a year-long rubric for them. And so what they would do after each project was go back to that rubric and say, am I a novice? Am I an apprentice? Am I a practitioner? Or am I an expert? And so they were constantly going through and assessing themselves on what they accomplished for the project and then what they felt they were building on as a student. And so in these portfolios, the students, because I keep it personal, it's just between me and them, they were telling me, I really learned so much. I learned the key to collaboration, and I learned how important it was to organize myself, or that when you're a leader in a team, you can't just tell people what to do. It's these kinds of lessons that they're learning that are not things that can be taught. It's those leadership skills that have to emerge from trial and error. Is that you think you're going to go into a team and you're going to say, you, and you do this, this, and this. And we as adults know that's not going to happen, but we have to learn that somehow. And instead of learning that in their first job, they've now learned that in 8th grade. So their end of the year reflections were fantastic. The kids realized, I didn't tell them during the year that they were doing Scrum or Agile or that they were doing design thinking or any of these other processes. I just told them that this was the way the class was. So in the last week of school, I said, do you realize that you've learned systems and you've been working within a system that adults all over the world work within, that people in Fortune 500 companies work this way, that you have done this at the age of 13. And they sat back and they thought about it, and they were really so happy, because all kids really want is they want those skills to be successful in life. And so they don't want to know what year George Washington was born, and they don't want to know what year the different agreement came out. They want to be successful in the world. They want to know how to operate. The world's a big, scary place. It keeps changing. So they reflected to me that they were feeling really confident and excited that they learned skills that they could actually take outside of the classroom and transfer to other places in their life.
Exactly. These are skills that will help them in the future, no matter how the situation would be, because the jobs that are existing currently may not exist in the future. But these are skills that will help them throughout their life.
I agree. And so we spend all this time teaching kids how to code, and we teach kids about AI, and we teach them all these other things and say that they're future ready. But future ready means that they can't just take direction. They have to be able to create. They have to be able to collaborate. They have to be able to work in teams. They have to have leadership roles. They have to be innovative. But you can't take a class on how to be innovative. It has to be woven in so that they learn the mindset. They learn that agile mindset, and it pushes them forward. And those are the skills that they need. Do they need to code? Absolutely. But they also need to know how to work within the kind of jobs that will exist when they get out of school in another 5 to 10 years.
Right. Critical thinking and collaboration are skills that are going to be very much needed in the future.
Absolutely. And there's so much with traditional systems of school that don't teach that critical thinking anymore. We have to move through content. We have to get this, and the quickest delivery is for me to tell you. But if I never teach you how to question, or if I never teach you to doubt, or how to look things up, or how to fact check, or that you should be, that's a huge part of our education that we're missing. We're missing those parts by pushing all this content. We're missing the critical thinking skills, and just looking up content. We don't need to do that anymore. We have AI, and as AI gets better and more complex and builds upon itself, those kind of simple jobs of just retrieval or just memory are not going to be there. They're going to be automated. So what can humans do that the AI can't do is the critical thinking, is empathy, is problem solving, and making those connections across content barriers. So those are the kinds of things that really need to come into education to push our students forward into the world.
Absolutely. Do you see any other gaps in the education system that Agile can address?
I think there's a huge part about student agency that gets overlooked a lot is that if we empower our students to make their own choices, first of all, a lot of schooling kids get worn down into the idea that they need to make a grade or they're afraid to fail because they want this grade or they don't want to be looked at the bad kid or they don't want to be making mistakes. And that's a real cultural problem that we have in schooling is no, you should be make mistakes now. You don't want to make mistakes, to egregious mistakes when you're an adult. You want to learn that you can make a mistake, reflect upon it. What did you do right? So what can we continue? What did we do wrong? So we'll throw that out. And how do we continue? So it's that kind of processing that we need to change the culture of schooling so that kids can question, they can try, they can protocol and experiment and see what works and what doesn't work. They need to learn real reflection about what did I do? Was it good? Was it bad? What can I keep? What can I not? Instead of just continuing forward. I feel like Agile really addresses so many different student needs. And that because it's pliable, it can address you and it can address me and it can address that person over there. It helps meet those differentiated needs as well. So, and in American schools, I don't know how it is with you, but all of our classrooms our kids are so diverse. They have so many different learning needs, so many different learning styles. Kids that have processing issues, kids that have dyslexia, kids that have motor skill issues. We have all these kids in our classroom. So how are we meeting all of their needs? All of their needs are not being met by me standing in the front of the room. But if you can show me that you have learned knowledge and that you can apply it to a problem, I don't care how you do it because you showed that you've mastered it. So you over there with dyslexia, you can show me that you've mastered it in your way. And you over there with motor skill issues, you can show me in that way. And with processing issues, you can show me that way. So it helps reach all students no matter where they are. They don't have to be at the same starting point, but we can all get them that understanding and learning and critical thinking that they all need to succeed.
Wonderful. Very interesting. Can you tell me your future plans?
I don't know. I'm being agile. I love teaching. I love working with students. I've always thrived in the classroom. Being in the classroom is my favorite place to be. So I'm sure that I will always be teaching. I would just love to spread the knowledge of what Agile and Scrum can do in the classroom to more educators. I would really like to see a change in the deeply rooted system of education, that it adapts. We need to take it out of where it started and bring it forward to meet the needs of the new world. So right now, I just want to let everyone know how great this was, not only for my students, but for me as well. This was an eye-opening experience this year, where it was anticipated. I anticipated that it would be a horrible, long, drawn out year because of the mask and the plexiglass and the distancing and all these things. And this turned out to be one of my most successful years as a teacher. I felt great about this. I had such a great experience with these kids, and these kids did such spectacular work that I really want to help advocate for Agile in schooling, that we change what we think school should be and we change what we think is important in an educational system so that we can take kids all over the world and bring them these kinds of skills that will only lift them and bring society to higher levels in the future. It would bring all of us forward if we helped education. So that's really what I want people to know. And so with also teaching students, I would like to help teach adults about how the great benefits that this brings to all of us.
Amazing. Thanks a lot for sharing these amazing insights and a detailed case study on how Agile can help in education. I really hope this inspires many more educators to come forward and implement Agile in their own way in the classrooms, irrespective of the country they are in. Thanks a lot again.
Thank you. And this really can go in any system. It doesn't matter where you are or what you're doing. It's because it's so flexible and so adaptive. So this is a skill that all of us need. It's not just that kids need it. We need it too. We need reminders that we can be more agile too. So thank you for the time. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening, and I'm sure this case study has provided insights about bringing agile methodologies into education. Please share this episode with parents and educators. I'll see you in the next episode.